by a person in a full one-piece hazmat suit every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Now Streaming. My guest today is my longtime friend, Josh Penley. Josh and his wife, Dana, are international explorers, international teachers, and they come in town about once a year. And so luckily today, Josh and I were able to spend the whole day together exploring Chinatown, Chicago, having excellent tea, food, and now a long-form interview on our home river. This is Now Streaming, Episode 3. Say hello, Josh.
Hello, everyone.
Good to have you. Josh has been a lot of things in life, but in his career path, he has chosen the profession of teacher. He is Mr. Penley, and he has taught in different locations. He was a Chicago public school teacher, right, for 9 years. He taught in Beijing, China for 3 years through this little season of life called COVID-19.
Which is a crazy time to be in Beijing, China.
I'll take your word for that. And currently is an international teacher in the country of Kuwait.
How are you?
So good. So good. It has been a super fun day. We got to do something today that I've never done. Actually, a few things today that I've never done. We went to Chinatown, Chicago, and we explored there. We ate some really, really excellent food that I'm kind of wanting again at this point in the day. And here's the thing, too, about saying that you had authentic Chinese food, is I can't say that because I've never been to China. But Josh lived and breathed and consumed China for 3 whole years of his life. And he knows. And so to get to consume through our stomachs today, through Josh's eyes, it's a weird way to say that, but I'm going with it, was really beautiful. So we got to explore. We had a couple different versions of tea. We had, what was the tiger place called?
Tiger Sugar.
Which is Taiwanese?
Taiwanese boba. It's the boba that will ruin all other boba for you.
It will, and I can attest to that. The brown sugar thing, first, how much paddling have you done?
I think all of my paddling adventure has all been with your family.
Okay, right on.
So your older brother, Landon, I did probably my first paddling with him. We would often just go and get lost on the Kankakee River. I remember being so unprepared, and we would be gone all day, and all we brought was one Cliff Bar apiece. But it was the best. And so, yeah, I think I really haven't paddled that much.
Well, hey, I have to tell you, your paddles are the right side up. I think all of my interviews have started off camera with me saying, hey, let's turn that paddle upside down. So you're doing great, buddy. You have lived and breathed more cultures than any other friend that I have. I would love to hear a little bit about how you got to where you're at. You're a teacher now.
I am.
When you were young, what was the first thing you remember like wanting to be?
I think, so if you would have asked like super young Josh Penley what he wanted to be, he would have said an architect. But he didn't know what that meant. I really liked like arts, and I thought drawing houses would be cool, and that's all I thought architecture was. But very quickly, that was not a reality. It was just a childhood dream. I think, realistically, I would have said singer, performer. I think our paths kind of are the similar in that way. And I actually think I chose teaching because I would have a captive audience every day. I didn't think that like I would be a good teacher, or I even necessarily knew what that meant. But I think I went into it being like, well, I'm going to have a group of people that have to listen to me. And I think that's where it started.
And so what age were you when that kind of clicked that you're like, you know, this is it. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be Mr. Penley. When was that?
It had to have been in high school. I went to, so something that I've reflected on in my life is that I didn't really know a lot of jobs that were available. My mom was like a stay-at-home mom for a long time. She was eventually became a nurse. My dad was a youth pastor and then hung garage doors or worked at like a local car dealer. So it was like local shop things. Last year, I think, was the first time I actually figured out what people in our small town of Kankakee area actually do for work. And so I didn't know a lot of options. It wasn't until I moved to Chicago, way after I became a teacher, that I was like, wait, hold on. That's a job that you can do? And I was a little maybe frustrated that younger version of Josh didn't know that that was an option. But I will say, I think I'm a very good teacher, and I've learned to hone the craft of teaching. I do like being performer, but it's developed so much more into I like presenting information in a way that kids want to learn it, which I don't think all teachers have that, and I don't think if you don't have that like performer in you a little bit, you're a really boring teacher. And so I think it does help. I did it naively for the wrong reasons, but I think it did make me a better teacher in the long run.
So your first teaching job landed you where?
And so I progressively student taught in, or like observed and student taught in like suburban schools. And then I finally student taught in Chicago itself at a place called Pierce Elementary. My first real teaching job was at a school called Greeley Elementary, which is in uptown Chicago.
Incredible. So I want to hear a little bit about those 9 years you spent as a teacher in Chicago. So you guys lived kind of on the north side. Every time I wanted to go see a Cubs game, and I apologize, I'm squinting a lot. Josh was intelligent and brought a hat, and I made different life choices, and I can't see anything. Every time I would go to Chicago to see the Cubs, I'd always text Josh and Dana and be like, hey, could I park outside your house?
Because we lived a block north.
Which, if you've ever been to Wrigley Field, you know that that's pretty prime territory for parking. It doesn't get a lot better than that, especially for free. I think an important part of your story, which you've already alluded to, is Dana. And I remember meeting Dana when I was, I don't know if I was in high school yet.
You probably knew her better first than I did.
So Dana was awesome. We all thought Dana was awesome. She helped out in our youth group. Your dad was our youth pastor. And so we all looked up to Dana. We thought she was awesome. She was like the cool leader that everybody wanted to be like. What I want to know is like, how on earth you convinced her to marry you?
And she was older than me.
Yes.
Which at that point was a huge deal. Yes. So I was a freshman in college. She was a senior in college, which is unheard of, realistically. Yeah. And I was like, there's no way that this senior, awesome, cool girl is going to care at all what I think or want to talk to me. But I was on a youth trip is how I first kind of met her. We were both working with the junior high. It's starting to really come down now. We were on a youth trip together, and it was up at Phantom Ranch, which was a camp that we all went to. And I started talking to her, and my mom being my mom, at one point was like, Dana, you should just marry one of my children. And she was like, well, Josh is, kind of, I was dating random people at that point, and she's like, all your other children are way younger.
Dating like random people off the street?
Yeah, and so when I first met her at Phantom Ranch, I honestly approached the situation like I didn't have a chance at all. So I was just, trying to act all cool. I remember sitting on the edge of the Phantom Ranch pier, and I was talking about, like, I wonder if we all see the same colors. And I was trying to be all cool and deep and stuff. The funny thing is, I honestly did not think this was going to go anywhere, and so I actually had a date. I made a date with her, and then I had a date with another girl the next day.
And does Dana know this?
She does. And it wasn't until, a couple dates in that I was like, oh, she's like into me, I think. She kept saying, but you're Josh Penley. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, She said it in a very like positive way. I was like, okay, I don't know what that means, but thank you. So that's how we met. We met working with middle school kids, which is a theme throughout our entire story as well. We just celebrated 13 years. Wow. I know. Amazing. But yeah, we met working with junior high kids. But I didn't think I had a chance. So anybody that's out there, shoot your shot.
Shoot your shot. Absolutely. I think you and I can both attest to we both married up, and it's a good way to be. And so you don't want to miss your opportunity. That is for dang sure. Okay, so Dana got a job in Chicago.
She was a high-profile accountant. Yeah.
Accountant to the stars. If you meet Dana, I mean, Dana's incredibly bright. She's detail-oriented. She's an incredibly intelligent human being.
She has made my life very easy.
I want to know what it was like coming from somewhere you've lived for, nearly 20 years and moving to, and like we came from a relatively small town. What was your experience in transitioning into something as large as the third largest city in our country? What was that like?
So day one of living in Chicago, we were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and a Cubs game had actually just gotten over, and so we lived right north of it, and we went out to get like groceries or something, milk or whatever, and there was these people on the ground, and it looked like the girl was hurt. I'm gonna tell the story. You don't have to put it in. Okay, go ahead. It looked like the girl was hurt, and we're like, oh no, like we need to help them. And so we go over there, and she was not hurt. Her head was just in his lap on the sidewalk. And I looked at Dana and I was like, welcome to Chicago. And really that was our experience. Like it was like a slap in the face. Chicago very quickly. I remember having people come up. I remember like Caleb and Natalie came up with some of our friends. And they, homeless people ask for money on every corner. And weird things are seen and said to you and smelled. And it very quickly becomes very normal. And I forgot how weird Chicago was until somebody, from an hour south of Chicago would come up. And you're like, oh yeah, you're right. That's weird. And so I feel like Chicago was a really interesting place because it was not a small town. It was this giant place with all of these cultures and all of the homeless people. And yeah, it just made for a really interesting place. Culture shock wise, I don't think it was like crazy because I did experience culture shock later in my life. But you will see so many weird things in Chicago.
I just want to hear more about what it was like to teach students that were so different from you culturally, even though you were in the same place and mostly from the same country.
So teaching in Chicago is a very different thing because I did experience teaching in some of the suburbs when I was observing and student teaching. And so, especially my school. So my school at Greeley, we actually had a gifted bilingual program. And so half of the school were kids that to get into the program, you had to speak 2 languages. Mostly it was Spanish. All of the white kids spoke Polish. And then there was a little Russian. That was the only 3 languages, even though we had like an African community. So there was like Kenyans and Nigerians that technically did speak other languages, but they weren't allowed in the program, which was a little weird. So you had this group that was here because they spoke 2 languages, and they were considered gifted. I don't think the test for that was super stringent. And then you just had the local neighborhood kids, and those kids could be rougher, like mom born in jail, raised by grandparents, now doesn't care about school because that's his reality. And so I feel like my experience in that was super hard at the beginning. Um, I actually remember my first couple of months teaching in Chicago. I cared a lot, and I could not sleep. And so I would get home, and Dana had no frame of reference. She was working in the corporate world, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I don't think I can help these kids, and I don't think that I'm actually doing them any service by just." I was a science teacher at that point. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science. Like they don't need to learn about rocks. Like they need friends and life and food. Like Maslow's hierarchy of needs was not being met. And so I remember for months I couldn't sleep. And so I don't know what happened. There was like a switch that was flipped, and I remember like becoming, I don't cold's the wrong word, but in order to be in that environment and try, you can't feel everything. And I don't know how I did it, but I eventually did it, and that was how it was survivable.
The criteria to be on the show is it's people that inspire me, that are doing good things for other people, that are caring for other people, and your life has often pointed towards others instead of inward, um, and I love that about you. And I've looked up to you since we were kids. You have a little age on me, not a lot.
Now, as adults, we're the same age.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it evens out after 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. But while you guys were there and you're navigating a new city and a new life and a young marriage, you were also cultivating something new in that school with wildlife. And I would love for you to tell us about that and that experience and the why you decided to walk that journey that was not an easy one. But also, can you zoom out and kind of explain what wildlife is?
Okay, so WildLife is a junior high version of a giant organization called YoungLife. YoungLife, in our town, we had Youth for Christ. It's essentially the same thing. So YoungLife is an organization that's often in schools, and they usually do they call it club. So club is like hangout time. And so club is fun, you do games, you sing songs. It's very much not focused on God. Club's not. It's very much just like meet the kids where they're at, have fun, you know, not in a weird way, but break down walls and become their friend, right? And then they had campaigners, which is the Bible study. And so I had never heard of Young Life. I didn't know the structure and the how it happened. So we were in a Bible study. We called them GCs, Gospel Communities, at the church that I was going to. It's Missio Day in Chicago. And there was this guy that was kind of leading a new movement at Missio. And his name was Russ Johnson. He's part of the Table Network now. Is that, you know that? Have you heard of that? But his whole thing was, as Christians, we need, it's important for you to study the Bible and be with other Christians and learn more about God and things like that. But if we just do that's not the point. Like, Jesus didn't just get with the disciples and talk. He then went out and talked to other people and helped other people. And so he was like, we need gospel communities where you have your core people and they are Christians and you have Bible studies, but then you need to go and do something together. And so they were like, find a group and find something that you're passionate about and just go do that. And so we were like, okay. We didn't know what that meant. Our group was pretty big. So we were like, okay, well, if everyone doesn't want to do the same thing, we can split up and find two different paths or whatever. So I went to my principal at Greeley. He was a Christian guy, which I got lucky with that. Um, and I was like, hey, like I have a small group at my school or my church, and we're looking to do something. Can we do something? So I was thinking tutoring, I don't know, clean this, I don't know, whatever, right? Something. Maybe you can come and do like recess or I don't know, something. And he goes, well, have you ever heard of YoungLife? And I was like, nope. And he goes, well, I know the head guy at this organization. What if you just reach out to him? His name was Luke. What if you reach out to him and we'll see if that works? I said, cool. So I reached out to Luke. I met up with him, and he's like, cool. So you're starting a wildlife? And I was I mean, sure. And he's like the first day I met this guy, he's like, cool. And so like, how many kids are you gonna bring to camp? And I was like, whoa, what? Like, I'm just seeing what my options are here. And he's like, well, you know, like we go to camp every year. It's super cool, and you know, Young Life camps. I didn't know this at the time. Young Life camps are like a 4-star hotel resort youth camp. Like it's the coolest camp in the world. And so I didn't know that, but you know, so I was like, well, you know, I just want to start it. Maybe we'll bring a couple kids. I don't know. We haven't even started this thing. And so through that year, we were able to start this thing. We had a lot of freedom that first year, where we could talk about it in the classroom. So I just invited all my students I taught. We used the gym at the school, and so we did that, and we didn't the whole club and campaigners thing. We just did it together. So we talked about God every week, and that was our first year, and it was super fun. And we ended up taking like 30 kids to camp, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Was that first year of camp, because I saw it through their eyes. You know, everything is new, and it's a mystery behind every thing that they do. And Young Life camps are really, really done well. And so that's kind of how it happened. We ended up doing it for 8 years. Throughout those 8 years, I had this one guy who was a teacher at the school who we were really good friends, and he didn't like the fact that I was a Christian talking to kids about Christ. And so he created a lot of problems for me and the group. But the funny thing about that, I prayed and talked to people about God probably more because of his opposition. I prayed with the vice principal and principal in their and this was a different principal, in their office. I was praying with them, and I was like, I don't think this would happen if this guy wasn't trying to shut me down. And so yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting experience. We couldn't legally, we couldn't advertise anymore, and so I was like, how am I supposed to get kids to a thing I can't advertise? And so we got real creative. We couldn't use wildlife or any of that stuff, so we made a shirt that just said Wednesday on it. It was a hoodie. It was awesome. It just said Wednesday on it, and that's it. It just said Wednesday. And so the kids would wear it, and everyone would be like, well, why do you have a Wednesday shirt? And they're like, oh, yeah, we have this thing called wildlife, because the kids could talk about it. But they're not good at that, And so they... that was fun. And then water bottles were a weird loophole, so we started making wildlife water bottles. And so it was a fun time. And with those leaders who we started with, we would grow. We had a connection with Moody Bible Institute, so a lot of our leaders started coming from there. And we had a Bible study with the leaders after wildlife. And so it was a very, very awesome time. And we were actually the first wildlife in the city of Chicago, and there are several now. And so that was really cool, yeah.
The show is not geared just towards people that faith guides their steps. And so to anybody that might be skeptical of hearing about a ministry in schools, Um, can you talk about the impact that this had on students and in the ways that this impacted their lives?
Yeah. And that was one of the guy that didn't like it. I would often try to like have a conversation because the kids that were coming to our program, um, these kids didn't have anything to do after school. Like their parents couldn't afford an after school program. They couldn't do all these things. And so there were kids that would come and they were safe at our school. I mean, some of them lived on the south side, which is not very safe. And there were some kids that might have gotten into certain gangs or drugs or promiscuity, even just like teenage pregnancy, that I really do believe because we were there, they were not getting into those things as much because they had an adult in their life that said, I see you and I want to talk to you about your life and you can talk about whatever you want. Like, we're not going to just shove Jesus down your throat. That's not why we exist. And we're just like, we're here and we're here for you. That was huge. And because we started the junior high version, a high school version, because there was another school called Lakeview that a lot of our kids went to. And there were so many former wildlife kids at Lakeview that they're like, I mean, if we just move a couple of adults up, we have a huge group. And so that was huge because I know that high school was way harder for them to try to not get into that stuff. And there was a lot of kids that did not get into things because of just because adults showed up. And that's all I mean, realistically, I had a lot of conversations with some people over the years and there was, because they let a Christian organization in, they technically had to let any other organization in. And the guy that was trying to stop us was like, fine, I'm going to start a satanic group. And he's like, fine, do it. The 8 years that we did it, no other group of adults wanted to hang out with kids every week and listen to them and put that much energy. And we did it every week for 8 years. And I think that consistency is huge. And I do think there's an added bonus with the religious piece. But the reality is there's a lot of kids in our world that just need adults to show up in their life. And we had that for them.
I want to know from that season of starting and fighting for wildlife, fighting for students, giving them alternatives, showing up for them, what changed most about Josh through that season?
I think when you see it, because even just as a teacher, you show up, you teach your reading, you teach your writing, they're there for 45 minutes to an hour. There's 35 kids in your class. You're not getting to know these kids, really. Like, you could show up every day as a teacher and just do your job, and you could learn nothing about your kids. I don't think you'd be that good of a teacher, but you could do that. And I think what wildlife did was, it was, 2 hours every Wednesday. And it was 2 hours every Wednesday, and we would sit and talk. And so I think growing up in a small town like this and having the generally good life that I had, I was not, even though there's people that struggle here, obviously, but I was not aware of it. And I think being in these kids' life and hearing their hard stories, and even just, it doesn't have to be like a crazy, mom in jail story. It's just, my mom came here from Mexico. She doesn't speak any English. She works 3 jobs just to make sure we can go to school and live. And it has nothing, the mom is trying her hardest, and there's nothing wrong with what the mom is doing. But you have, these kids that just live in this reality, and they came to this country for a better thing, and they will have a better life because their parents sacrificed their life. I just think hearing those stories over and over and over again gave me perspective. And it was my first glimpse into not my own little world that I was used to. And I think that was really important. I think more people need to talk to other people that are not like them. And we all are all people, and we all want the same things. And if we could just open ourselves up to other people's stories, I think life would be a lot better.
So Josh, before we get into kind of the next chapter, which is wild, I want to pause and go back in time just a little bit, because we chose this route today because we're paddling through your hometown. This is where you grew up, and I wondered if we could just kind of stop and pause, and as you paddle through some areas that you and your dad and your brothers roamed and played and explored. What if we just talk about your dad for a second?
Yeah.
So your dad was my youth pastor, and he worked with my dad for a number of years, and was just an incredible dude, to say the least. He skated with Tony Hawk back in the day, and he built a half pipe in your backyard, and he started a club, more or less, for some young men. And we all got together and we learned about Jesus, and we learned about discipline, and we learned about taking care of our bodies and our friends through the medium of airsoft, which, if you don't know, is just paintball but smaller and hurts more. And your dad had an incredible impact on me. He really feels more like an uncle to me, because I was so close with you and your brother, Caleb specifically. And so I just wonder what you feel, what you think about as you paddle back through this area that was home. Your dad died of COVID, tragically, and it's been some time. And so what is it like to kind of be back on this stream, on this river today?
Well, it's funny. So as you're saying this, so we're coming up to the Aroma Park Dam, which is not a dam anymore, but you can actually walk the top of the dam. Have you ever done that? And so I have very specific memories walking the dam with fishing poles, and we would fish off of it. But I had to have been like tiny, because there were multiple times when it was any sort of rushing that I would often lose my balance, and my dad would have to like catch me. And so from a young age, we would come out here and fish. We camped on this little island up here, this little sandbar, a couple of times. Caught crawdads under the rocks underneath this railroad track. So yeah, this specific area right here is actually, this is it right here. I mean, these railroad tracks down the street is across from my house, and these were the ones we used to play tag on. I think I hid on the railroad tracks a couple times. Yeah. And lived to tell the tale. But yeah, my dad was a good dude. I always said he was probably more of a kid than I ever was. Not that. I was more of an adult at the age of 12, I think, than my dad was, in the best way possible, obviously. I was talking to my niece, who is very like conscious of like hurting herself and stuff. And I was like, so my dad, Bob, I think the first time I ever got in trouble with the cops, I was with my dad. Multiple times, whether it was fireworks or jumping over shopping carts in Metaview and the cops rolled up, whether it was, anytime I potentially could have died or gotten hurt or did get hurt, I was with my dad. Yep. And so yeah, so he was that guy. He he was fun. The one thing about him though too that was fascinating. So later in life, when I lived in Chicago, he came up a couple of times and we hung out. And we went to, we just went downtown. We were on the Red Line. And this is my dad in a nutshell, this story. So let's get through this.
We're paddling over the old dam right now. It's a little wavy here. Okay, nice and smooth.
Nice and smooth. So we're on the Red Line, and as the Red Line goes, there's a homeless guy, younger guy actually, but he was just asking people for money. My dad never gave anybody money in that way, and this is, I don't know how he did it, because there's certain people when they like talk to homeless people or people that are down and out or just people in general, you're like, oh my, like, stop, like this is really, like, not annoying, this is really cringy, best word. But he very quietly just said, hey man, like, what's going on, and he's like, oh, like, I'm just trying to make things work, and goes. And so all my dad said very quietly was like, tell me about yourself. What's going on? And he listened to a guy. We're on the Red Line. We're on a train in Chicago where everyone averts their eyes and just hopes the guy goes away. And I did that all the time because there's too many of them. You get used to it. This is how Chicago desensitizes you. But my dad, very non-weird, just starts having a conversation with this guy. And I don't know how it happened, but he's like, can I pray for you? And I was like, what is happening? And it wasn't weird. It wasn't weird at all. And the guy was like, yeah, totally. And so my dad like touched him on his shoulder and just prayed for him. And I'm crying on the Red Line. And I was like, Dad, how do you do that? Like, how do you so easily talk to anyone and make it not weird at all? You almost make it fun somehow. And then you always point it back to God somehow. And in the most non-weird way possible. And that's something I've struggled with for a lot of it. Because I've had my journey of doubt and trying to figure out Christianity. But he did it. He talked about God in such a way that wasn't weird. And he put him at ease. And it was almost not that. It was just that he actually cared about people. And I saw that over and over and over again. And that one time will always live with me. And I want to figure out how to do that. I don't think I'm good at it. But just making people feel at ease, even if it's a homeless guy on the Red Line.
Yeah, and it's, of course, telling the story, it's easy to imagine it a way it wasn't. But man, he really did have a way of breaking down barriers with people, of never ever, hey, what's up, buddy? Of never treating anybody like the other, ever. Yeah, man, I miss him.
Well, and the funny thing about that, he attracted some characters. Oh, yeah. And there was no way that person was ever going to be left out. And I need to do more of that, like it was, because he didn't care anything about you. Everyone could think you were the most annoying person in the world. And my dad would just be like, hey, what are you doing? You want to hang out? It's crazy.
And being on adventures with your dad, sometimes as a teenage kid, it was annoying. If I could just be honest, like sometimes we'd be out doing a thing. It's the normal group of guys, and he'd bring out some character that was not like us, that did not fit in, that did not get us. We didn't get him. But he didn't care. He always brought people along for the ride.
And that kid was better for it.
And he brought people along for the ride that needed to be there and that wouldn't have been in community with others otherwise. And I saw that over and over and over. And man, what a good example! What an incredible legacy he left. And I think part of the legacy that he's left through you is that of adventure. Your dad was not afraid of anything. It was almost frustrating because we'd go out and go on adventures. And like, I remember, especially being younger, I'm like, should we be a little more concerned about the weather today?
Well, and that was that's my statement about I was more of an adult than he was. Because like, Dad, we're gonna get hurt.
Yeah, something bad's gonna happen to somebody.
Somebody's gonna call the cops.
And they did.
And he's like, it's fine. He could always talk his way out of it anyway.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he was incredibly charismatic and disarming to a fault.
I think that's what it is. It's disarming.
Disarming.
That's how he was able to approach everyone too. Because it wasn't awkward. I've been with so many people that try to do that, and it gets real awkward real fast.
Yeah, it just seems weird.
It seems weird.
Yeah.
It seems forced.
Yeah.
But he never felt that way.
So yeah, so I think one of the things that I see in you, it just is that fearlessness, is that no adventure is too big, and we could get into all of our misadventures over time, and all of the unique situations we found ourselves in with the airsoft team. We found ourselves training with the ROTC at some complex that I don't think we were allowed to know where it was.
Yeah.
I certainly don't know where we ended up.
I got zip tied at that one.
You did get zip tied at that one. Didn't you tackle a guy into a hole? That was awesome.
Yeah. That was fun.
But it wasn't about that, and it's not like we were some like church paramilitary group. It's not like that. It was about learning discipline and learning how to walk with the Lord with intention, and learning how to get along with other dudes, which is really, really challenging when we're all in our late teenage years, just pumping full of testosterone. But he did it in a way that's stuck with me. And I can see it stuck in you. And so that leads me to our next chapter that I want to hear about, that I would love for you to tell people about, is in 2019, you decided that teaching in Chicago wasn't challenging enough, and that it was time to go be a teacher in Beijing, China.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing was I said, hey, let's go try to do this international teaching thing. We'll go anywhere but China.
What got you to this thought? Because earlier in your story, you're kind of frustrated because you feel like you didn't understand the paths that were available to you enough. And then, so how did you land on, you know what, a path that I would really like is one that brings me to a country I've never been in, one where I don't speak the language. Oh, and by the way, I don't know anybody. And I'm going to bring my wife along for the adventure. So just, yeah, how on earth did you get there?
So there was one teacher at Greeley who went and taught in China, and then she came back. Like, she just went for a couple, maybe like 2 years or something, came back. But she was also the type of person, it was a lady named Miss Yagoda. And Miss Yagoda was this person that, like, we were like, I mean, it's Yagoda. That makes total sense. Like, she can just totally move to China and do this thing. And a guy that Dana worked with, he grew up in Taiwan. He was like an international school kid. And his dad was a principal. And so Dana was like, we should do this. We should do this. And to be honest, one year I was like, you know what? Maybe, but like, I really like my kids. Like, I don't want to leave Greeley. And then the next year, I had a rough group, and I was like, all right, Dana, I'm ready. And she was like, well, I just got a new job, so we're not going. And I was like, okay. So we were kind of like, that third year, we were like, you know what, we could do this. It was right before COVID, but we could do this. And so I actually met with his dad, that guy, and I asked him, did like a little kind of interview-ish kind of thing, and I was very obvious right away that I was in over my head. I I was a little green on the international scene. And he's like, hey, like, there's a lot that you said during your interview that might make me not want to hire you. I was like, oh, okay. What are those things? And I will figure out how to do that. And so I was told that it was later in the year, and they were like, hey, like, the way that international schools work is that they start hiring people in October. And so you're probably not going to get a job. But you could interview places and maybe you'll get it. Or no, maybe you'll just get practice and then you can go for it next year. And I was like, cool. So I saw that there was I use this thing called Search Associates, which is like the middleman. They like connect teachers to schools. And so I saw that there was a online fair. And I think COVID had happened. And so there was everything went, they were like, oh, we can do this online or whatever. So there was an online fair. And when we said it, we were like, we will legitimately go anywhere in the world but China. And I really the only reason was, I think, just the naivety and what America thought of China. And so I was like, let's use this. I was like, I'm not going to get a job, but let's interview. I'll get the practice, work on my things that this guy told me, and we'll hit it next year. And so I go on this thing, and I end up getting 2 job offers. One was in a school, both of them were in Beijing. One was a school now that I know was like in the middle of nowhere. I'm glad I didn't take that job. And then one was at this school called Tsinghua. And Tsinghua offered me the job, and I said, Dana, we can go. We can go if we want to. It's in China, though. And she's like, I mean, maybe it's the foot in the door we need. And we were like, okay, let's do this. The story gets crazier and crazier as we go, though. So when COVID hit, I had a spring break trip, man, to North Carolina. That was going to be so cool. We were going to go hiking. And as we know, COVID lasted years. We didn't expect that. And because of that, and China was the most hardcore of the COVID restrictions, I did not make the school year on time. I ended up moving in with my in-laws in Iowa and was teaching in China from like 11 to 3 a.m. The kids were in the classroom. Like, the kids were in the classroom and I was on the screen, which is the worst way to teach a class. They don't have to listen to you at all. You're on a screen. And so that was fascinating. Dana ended up not being able to come for a year, which was really weird. I became a single living person for a year. Didn't think that would happen. And she was going to come on a spouse visa and continue to work her startup job. And then we realized that was never going to happen. And so she ended up getting a teaching degree. And now she teaches math. So that whole time really taught me that, one, anything can happen, but being super flexible can work out, because I actually think teaching abroad wouldn't have worked as well if Dana was still working for her startup job, because the hours would have been weird. She wouldn't have been able to like make friends because she'd just be at home all day. And so I think her becoming a teacher was probably the best thing for our future. And that wouldn't have happened if COVID didn't happen and she didn't get to China, which is crazy.
That is wild.
But it's like actually set us up for the best version of this.
That's hard to fathom.
Yeah.
So she gets there, and you guys are teachers side by side, and you discover this love for something that's not as prevalent in the States, and you discover this love for tea.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would love for you to talk about the role of tea in your acclimating to China, to Beijing, and and why it is that you've chosen to, can I say obsess?
Oh, 100%.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So why you've chosen to obsess over it ever since?
For my life around it. Um, okay, so tea. I didn't drink tea realistically before China. I didn't drink coffee. I didn't drink tea. I was more of a Red Bull guy. Uh, but I was like, oh, we're in China. Like, let's look into this tea thing. And it was actually a little like the year by myself. I tried to like look around and find it, and it was a little difficult because my Chinese wasn't very good, and I didn't know where some of these like tea markets were. And so it wasn't until Dana got there actually that we started to really get into it. And one of the really awesome things about that whole process was living in Beijing. This is not all of China. And maybe a little had to do with COVID because people were scared of us because they thought we had COVID. Was that people didn't really help us with our language. So we didn't really speak Chinese, and they didn't speak any English. And so we would come in with not very good Chinese, and they wouldn't really help us and just try to get us out the door as fast as humanly possible, which was hard because then I didn't really learn Chinese. And so we found from one of our friends this cool market. It had a meat section and like a dried fruit section, and then this entire tea section. And this is like, so that one shop we went to, right? There's probably 150 of those in one building. And the cool thing was they wanted to sell me tea. And I didn't speak Chinese. But they still wanted to sell me tea. And so we would sit at first with Google Translate, but we would sit for hours and just the thing with tea in China is that you never buy tea that you haven't tasted. And so they would sit down and do the whole tea ceremony and have you try a bunch of different teas because they want to make sure that you buy a tea that you actually like. And so we would sit down and drink tea for hours and try our Chinese. The only Chinese Dana knows is tea-related Chinese. But it made us more confident in our Chinese. And the whole process of brewing tea is very slow. And so you sit and you talk. Even if it's super clunky through a translator. But that was such a really awesome experience. One, because we were kind of getting frustrated with all the people that wouldn't help us. And so these people became kind of like the nice people we know in China. And so that was super awesome. The other thing I like about tea is that there's so many facets. And I feel like I really like to do things that I can learn for a long time about. And so there's white tea, red tea, black tea, oolong tea, pu'er, yellow tea. Then you can get into the flower teas if you want. And so there's all these different types. And then inside that, you have white tea from Fujian, and you have white tea from Yunnan. And then in Fujian, you have white tea from that mountain, and then you have white from that mountain. And then, if you want to, you can go white tea from this mountain, from this elevation, or this elevation, or this elevation. Or you can go from this elevation, but on the other side of the mountain, which actually gets more water. It's that specific. And people know what they're talking about in Chinese about that specificity of tea. And so it was like an endless thing that you could do. And I loved that. I still love that. And so that was really cool. That's why I like tea.
So Josh and I, we've luckily had the day clear together to go and hang out and reconnect and explore. So we went to Chinatown, Chicago today, and I got to see. I've never been to Chinatown, but even if I went alone, I couldn't have had the experience I had today. We had, as I mentioned, really great food, really great tea, but I got to walk through it in a really special way because of Josh's connection to the culture and understanding of the language and ability to speak the language. Which, if you had a friend that you've known for decades and you always speak English together, and then all of a sudden he's speaking fluent Chinese to somebody, it's a little jarring. It was pretty cool. So I'll if you haven't yet, subscribe, like the channel, because I'm going to be posting some vlog footage of Josh and I walking through a tea ceremony with the tea shop owner. And if you've never seen it done with the guy War, right?
Beijing accent.
Beijing accent. Yeah, there you go. Not to flex on all of you. But if you've never seen it done that way, you should really check out that video because it is slow and it's special and it's very, very interesting. So needless to say, tea has become a pretty big part of your life.
Yes.
And it's something that it's been fun to watch you work into your podcast, which actually Josh is the host of 2 podcasts because he's a big deal. and so Josh has 2 podcasts I want to plug really fast. One is called Let's Talk. I've appeared on that show 2 times now.
Only one so far.
Yeah, so by the time this airs, I'd probably still maybe, I don't know, but the only one to appear on that show twice. And he also has a show which I highly, highly, highly recommend called The Penley Perspective. And The Penley Perspective is a show where he and his wife Dana recount all of the incredible adventures they're having. They kind of walk through everything in real time, and it is a really, really special show. And if you're into hearing from interesting people who are doing adventures, and you want to live vicariously through them, I would encourage you to go right now, pause this video, and go watch The Penley Perspective, and then come back. So Josh, you guys did an incredible thing, moving to China, being separated for a full year from your spouse, and figuring that out. And we could get into all of the crazy details of your quarantine, being locked in a room for however many weeks, 2 weeks, and eating food that was dropped off at the door
by a person in a full one-piece hazmat suit every day.
And then you decided that now that you were getting comfortable and learning the language a little bit and making friends and getting into the swing of things, that it's probably time to move around the world again.
Yeah.
So before we get to where, I want to get to the why. Why shake things up right when they were getting smooth?
Well, the real answer is, like I said earlier, in teaching, international teaching, you have to make the decision to stay at your school in October. In October of that year, China was still looked like China would literally never give up on COVID. And so we kept getting locked in our homes, and we originally did this whole thing because we wanted to travel and see the world, and we saw China, but we weren't really able to ever leave China, and we're like, I mean, it's not why we did this. And so we said, okay, we're done in October, and started finding jobs, or trying to find jobs, after that. And so we had our next job, which was Kuwait, before China gave up on COVID. And so if China would have given up earlier, we actually still might be there, because it was a good gig. It's awesome teaching children in China. They're the best students in the world. And so I think realistically, it was because of COVID.
What have you learned in this last year in Kuwait?
A lot. It's funny, as an American, as a sheltered American, the 2 places that, your grandparents tell you never to go is China and the Middle East. And those are the 2 places I've lived. And so I really think, because, okay, stepping back a little bit, we went to China. China's you know, America's enemy or whatever. Chinese people are not America's enemy. Chinese people are just people living in China. They want the same things we want. And the more I learned Chinese, the friendlier they got, even, you know? And I moved to Kuwait, and Kuwait is a Muslim nation. So their entire everything is all about Islam and the rules of Islam. And I've never been in a place that's like that religious. Um, and that's fascinating. I actually feel way more at ease talking about my own faith in Kuwait than I have anywhere in the world. Because they're very religious. They're not my religion, but they're very religious. And that's very interesting. And so, again, you know, people think of the Middle East, they think of war torn, whatever. Kuwait's a beautiful city that has a lot of people with a lot of money, and any American fast food restaurant you can think of. And so I think what living abroad on the very biggest sense has done is just opened my eyes to realistically what people think these places are is not true. And we're all just people, and we all have different cultures, but ultimately, very little difference.
Man, well, Josh, I am just so enamored and curious and fascinated about your guys' journey. Hey, thanks for starting the blog. Just want to say thanks for starting the blog so that those of us elsewhere can keep up with the adventures that you are embarking on.
Well, and I mean, we started the blog so that, or the blog, so that people can go do our adventures. Like I read a lot of blogs when we travel, and I'm always trying to figure out, okay, what's the most useful things on these? And so we are writing exactly the trips that we do. And so if you're ever looking to go to Oman or Dubai or Thailand or China, you can go to thepenleyperspective.com and we tell you anything you need to know about that place.
So definitely go and check that out. Josh, it's been such a pleasure to hang out today and to get real and to be able to share your story. And so there's another question I want to ask before we wrap up, and it's one of the reasons why I decided to ask you to be on the show. You and Dana have had this theme of constantly pointing your lives towards serving others, and I am just so inspired by it. And so what I want to know is why still teaching, why still speaking into the lives of young people instead of, I mean, you guys are incredibly bright. Dana had a corporate past. She could have been incredibly successful in that realm. You could have done anything you wanted. Why teaching? Why this route?
I think the longer life happens and the more I do teach, I see there's a lot of people that say nothing can be done in our world. Climate change is going to kill us all. Our differences are going to kill us all. Whatever is going to kill us all. And it's just not really true. And the realistic answer to this is the kids are going to change things. And I hope that the way that I teach and the way that I try to emulate living makes a difference in these kids, which legitimately are our future and are the next generation. And like, I specifically teach reading and writing now. And one of the things that I try to do is teach kids how to think. I don't teach them what to think, but I teach them how to think. Like, you need to hear somebody say something and question them. Even me. Like, if I say something as a teacher that doesn't sound right, go look it up. Like, question things. Think for yourself. Have an argument with somebody civilly that has evidence, not just what you think. And that's what I'm realistically focusing on in teaching now is you need to think for yourself, and when you say something, it needs to be based on some sort of evidence. And I feel like if we do that as humans more and more, and listen, like you can't just talk at people, right? And listen and try to understand other people. If we do that, this world will actually be a better place. And so I feel some sort of drive to still make that a reality in kids for the future.
I think all of us, if we just took a moment to reflect on the better moments, the better lives that we've been able to live because of teachers like Josh who are finding purpose and helping us along, it's an incredible thing. We end every episode with a lightning round of questions. Are you ready to embark on this final stretch of our journey here?
I'm ready.
Okay. Josh, who was your first celebrity crush? I don't want to know current.
Kate Hudson.
Kate Hudson.
Yeah.
You didn't think about that at all. Everybody I've asked that is like, let me go back in my mind's eye and ponder the things of past. No, Kate Hudson. Okay. Very good. What song lives rent-free in your head?
I don't know. So songs that I've listened to the most and often come up would be 21 Pilots. And so probably what's that one? Well, Migraine. So I got a migraine. Up, down and sideways. You know, 21 Pilots in the entirety lives rent free in my head.
I would like to announce the beginning of a new show that I'm starting called Kayak Karaoke. That was awesome. I have this question I already know where this is going to go, but Josh, how do you take your coffee?
Arabic. I actually like Arabic coffee.
Okay, what's the difference between like American coffee and Arabic coffee?
So they use a greener bean, so it's not as dark roasted, and they put cardamom in it. So it's like it's cinnamon-like.
Okay. And wouldn't that be more caffeinated, the green of the bean?
Maybe. It's very good though. Yeah. And I don't really like coffee, but Arabic coffee, that's where it's at.
Josh, if you had a lightsaber, what color would it be?
Blue.
Favorite family vacation?
We would go to Kentucky a lot. We would get up 4 or 5 in the morning, go fishing. We would catch lots and lots of fish. So on the water, early morning, catching fish in Kentucky. Best.
Okay, Josh, this is a question that matters. It's very important to me. Where can you get the best pizza?
Oh, such a hard question. I'm gonna give you 2 answers. I really like Aurelio's. So Aurelio's in our hometown is good. I know it's originally from Homewood, but whatever, it's from ours. But if you want deep dish pizza, and it's not one of the ones that everyone goes to in Chicago.
So not a Malnati's or a Giordano's, Gino's East?
Nope.
Okay.
It's called Pequod's.
P what?
Pequod's.
Pequods?
Pequod.
Pequod?
Duh.
Pequod.
Pequod's.
Pequods.
It is amazing deep dish pizza, and their mascot is the white whale from Moby Dick with women's underwear on its head.
This is a real place?
Real place, the best deep dish pizza.
Where can we find it?
It's like the northwest side.
Okay, I'm asking this question, but I guess you're kind of living the answer. If you were to live in a country outside of the U.S., where would it be? Like, so let me reframe this for you because you live abroad. If you were going to settle down in a country outside of the United States, where would you choose?
My current answer to that question is Thailand. I might retire in Thailand. That's a real possibility. And I like the city of Bangkok, so it would be Bangkok, Thailand.
As somebody who's involved in a lot of things, we didn't even get into rock climbing. Josh is an avid rock climber. He's an incredibly talented dude. He's involved with rock climbing. He finds a climbing gym everywhere he goes, which I thought was kind of an American thing with my limited view. But he's very active in a climbing gym in Beijing, very active in a climbing gym now in Kuwait. But as a guy who's active in a lot of things, where does Josh Penley find rest?
Mm. My current restful time is before work. I take out my tea set and I make my wife and I gong fu style tea using my gaiwar for an hour in the morning. That has been a very nice, restful addition to my life. I think it focuses me. I think the Chinese are right. Tea is medicine, and that's that would be the. I get rest every morning.
Final question, and I do just want to say thank you again for joining me for this episode of Now Streaming, which was one of the more wild episodes.
I mean, it had to be.
It had to be, yeah, and it's pretty tame compared to our adventures as young men.
That's true.
And so, last question: the world is a crazy place. You've seen more of it than a lot of people, and up close. Where do you find hope?
I think it goes along with a thing I've said before. So the 2 weeks I was in quarantine in China, can't leave, food's brought to the door, has a hazmat suit. I was in Guangzhou, China, and you kind of go crazy, to be right. You're sitting alone for 2 weeks, and they were building a road out in front of my hotel room, and I would watch these guys work every day. And I had it's a very normal thought, but in my quarantine brain, I had an epiphany. And I was like, you know what? The only difference between me and that guy right there making that road is that we were born in different countries. Like, besides that, there's not a lot of difference. And I do find hope now that the world is becoming a little bit bigger, more smaller, more connected. You can see things from around the world on your phone at any moment. My hope is that actually ends up bringing us closer together. We realize that people are just people. And I do hope for the future that in a time that feels like we're becoming more and more polarized and against each other, that we can take a step back, maybe bust out a tea set, and realize we're all just human.
Josh, thank you so much again for being on this episode of Now Streaming. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to the channel. We've got an incredible roster of episodes. Josh's is top of that roster, though. This was fun. This was an adventure. He and I are very wet. Are you hungry? Because I'm hungry.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and we hope to see you on the next one. Later. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to Now Streaming, like this video, share it with a friend. It makes the future of Now Streaming much more possible.